in the studio, the great Peter Bleksley, who is, of course, a former Scotland Yard detective. Peter, thanks for coming in. Another extraordinary week for announcements about crime. Two key things we wanted to sort of get through. Firstly, this announcement that was reported yesterday. Surprise, surprise, that the police should investigate every crime. I mean, that sounds like sort of common sense that we all thought always used to happen. Now all of a sudden it's making the headlines as though it's revolutionary, new thinking.
The greatest reinvention of the policing wheel ever known to mankind, because, of course, when I joined the police a long time ago in the late 1970s, we did exactly that. We investigated every crime. There was a major crime book and a beat crime book. The less serious crimes went into the beat crime book, and they were investigated by the beat bobbies, who consequently knew people on their patch and all of that. But then there was a mission creep, and it coincided with senior police officers trotting off to university so that they could get letters after their names as well as in front of them. And they came back to policing with their heads full of pseudo-intellectual claptrap, which they've applied to policing in the last 20 years or so with huge vigour. And that is why now policing, generally speaking, is the shambles that it is. I'm not talking about the courageous men and women on the front line who run towards danger so that we can sleep safely in our beds. I'm talking about the clowns that create the policies that enforce them upon police officers, and in doing that, fail us all.
But presumably this is just... it's a soundbite. It's a headline for a newspaper. You'll have the two main parties both sort of saying they're going to be tough on crime, but it's meaningless unless you actually know the processes can actually do that. And why is it that the processes now can't investigate every crime, and yet they could, as you say, 50 years ago?
Well, they'll claim, the police will claim they don't have the resources. They are focusing on other priorities. But this is the really shameful part of it in what policing has done in recent years. Some clown who probably got promoted for dreaming this expression up started off with screening out crimes. So that was the first drip feed of the police not doing their job. So they chose not to investigate certain crimes. And of course, it's got worse and worse. Some other clown came up with the deeply offensive expression of low-level crime. Well, you imagine being a chippy, a Sparks, a plumber, and having all your tools stolen out of your van.
Nothing low-level about that.
Nothing at all.
It's serious and it's infuriating.
It is. So is having your family car stolen from outside your house. So is having your home burgled. Some people can never return home after they've had their houses trashed. And some of this crime, the police had the temerity to call low-level and turn their backs on it. Well, they've realised that the public don't trust them anymore because they don't see them and they don't investigate the crime, hence this announcement.
OK, so let's try and be optimistic, and let's say that they're genuine in this desire to reform themselves. What do they need to do? What changes, what processes, in order to actually be able to do this and to investigate every crime with some degree of credibility?
Get police officers away from desks. There are police officers, believe it or not, on roles that they call business duties. Policing a business, you see, this again is the mumbo-jumbo claptrap from university-educated types, OK? Policing is policing. It's not business. They choose to call it business because it probably makes them feel a bit better about themselves. It's utter nonsense. Get those officers away from behind desks so that they can proactively investigate crime. Also, particularly in the Metropolitan Police, there are hundreds upon hundreds of officers who are currently suspended or not allowed to have public-facing duties. So those investigations have got to be expedited. Those investigations need to be carried out extremely quickly, promptly, and when there is concrete evidence of wrongdoing, get rid of the wrong ones and get some good cops in.
Absolutely right. So essentially, I mean, there's no question, police need to be on the streets, frankly, rather than sort of looking at tweets from behind a desk, without question. So, but what about the court process as part of this? The police will often say, yes, but everything, the backlog into the courts takes too long, the processes to take people takes too long, the time it takes to arrest someone and take them to a cell and get them off the streets takes too long. What do we do with the courts process in order to make things happen quickly? Because otherwise, to retain public confidence, you've got to know, if you've got video evidence of someone, nicking something because you've got CCTV evidence, I mean, it's an open and shut case, isn't it?
It certainly should be. Speak to any frontline police officer and they will tell you about the frustrations that they face on a daily basis with IT, for example, duplication, systems that quite frankly are not fit for purpose. But yet again, you see, those clowns in charge metaphorically have had their trousers taken down by people from IT who have been able to sell them systems by pulling the wool over their eyes. It's not for those police officers to commission this kind of stuff. It should be done with considerable consultation with the people that use the kit day in, day out.
Got it. But looking at the courts themselves, I mean, I've got, there is vast backlogs. Could you have a new parallel court system starting literally from scratch for current crimes, almost like where there's irrefutable video evidence of a crime, it doesn't need to take months to start investigating it. See, I want that looked at tomorrow, in court tomorrow. There's the video evidence, bang to rights. Off you go to some detention centre in some cold and inhospitable place in the Outer Shetlands.
But the basket-weaving defence lawyers have got to earn their money.
Well, they've got a couple of days to earn their cash.
It's in their interest to delay, to procrastinate, to have cases remanded and remanded. That's how they get paid.
But that's what the politicians should do, is make a short, fast-track process. I mean, crikey, if you can fast-track through an airport terminal, we ought to be able to fast-track video evidence of criminals and say, well, yeah, there's the evidence. You've got a couple of days to get a lawyer, otherwise you're going to be banged up.
I've got something I'd like to mention on that very note. The relatively new police commissioner of the Metropolitan Police, Sir Mark Rowley, had 5 years out of policing before he came back into the top job. And he's very keen on tech, and he said that he's going to utilise tech to make the police more efficient. I had a meeting with a tech company last week, and they are developing an AI program which will hopefully be able to hoover up and analyse thousands of hours of CCTV with the press of a button. It's in development. If Mr. Rowley would like to have a cup of tea with me, I'll bring the tech company to him and I'll show them exactly how it's working. And I've helped this tech company by giving them a few very useful tidbits that they previously hadn't thought of.
That sounds really interesting. That's one of the sort of the positive benefits that AI in the right hands can really help all of us with.
Indeed.
Which would short-circuit things, because that's what we absolutely got to do. And in a sense, look, investigating every crime, it's a noble ideal. It's one that always was the case. It's a variant of a sort of a broken windows type policy where you investigate every single crime. I use the word however upsetting, however low level, whether it's graffiti on a wall, whatever, whether it's a smashed window, then actually it's investigated, you use video evidence, because if you look after the small things, then that actually helps reduce the escalation. And we saw that this week with Co-op. I mean, the data on shoplifting that came out of the Co-op shops, looting and theft. I mean, they could do almost 1,000 incidents every single day just from one supermarket, Peter.
Absolutely astonishing. Now, I live in suburban London, and my two local co-ops are a source of much joy. I speak to the staff, I engage with them, they're terrific people, and they provide an absolutely brilliant service. One of them suffered an armed robbery not so long ago, and I helped the young man who'd been helped at gunpoint, just trying to sort of help him with his trauma and getting over the events and what have you. These figures are utterly unacceptable. And on this note, the National Police Chiefs Council who we will hear from, I think, next month, saying they're going to investigate every crime, they released a statement this week in response to all the media coverage that the Co-op got.
Right.
Quite rightly so. And a lot of Co-op senior execs had a lot of airtime expressing just how appalling the situation is and that the police, by and large, are doing nothing, with the exception of Sussex and Nottinghamshire police. So the National Police Chiefs Council, in response to all this pressure from the Co-op, said, retail crime has a damaging impact on people and business. Correct. True. Which is why we are doing everything possible to tackle offenders and support retailers in reducing shoplifting and attacks on retail staff. That's not true.
That's just flannel and waffle.
It's just not true. Great friends of mine run a brilliant sports shop in suburban London. Professional thieves came in a few weeks ago and stole 3 cricket bats. For people who don't know, cricket bats are very expensive, 400 quid or so. So these 3 bats were worth £1,150, a serious crime to an independent retailer. The police officer dealing with that case, and I say dealing in inverted commas, works from home, doesn't have a car, and therefore cannot attend the scenes of crime. That, ladies and gentlemen, is part of the Metropolitan Police in 2023.
That's unbelievable. You can't be a police officer working from home without a car investigating retail crime.
Preventing crime in his kitchen, is he?
It's just utter madness. So the Co-op, the Freedom of Information request by the Co-op showed that the police failed to respond in 71% of serious retail crimes that they reported. One inner-city London store was looted 3 times in a day. You've got a situation now where even relatively modest items in supermarkets are being electronically tagged on an individual basis, whether it's a steak or whatever, because theft has risen. And this is all because there's no broken windows policy, and therefore there's no fear of being caught and prosecuted.
And we're going to see more dummy packaging, and we're probably going to see more high-value items behind screens. But some of the footage that the Co-op released this week, utterly terrifying, of masked people jumping behind the screens, emptying the shelves of alcohol, tobacco, and all those kind of things. And they're armed. You know, they've got knives, machetes, they come with their bags, hooded up. Dreadful crime to be subjected to if you're one of the shop staff or if you're a customer who gets caught up in the midst of it. And the Co-op are saying these kind of crimes they're not getting a response for.
I mean, just appalling. And I guess, therefore, they're going to start to... either they're going to not stock the shelves, and I've heard this even in sort of Boots, I've heard that on Boots' sort of makeup department, they're not stocking the shelves because they know that they're just being nicked all the time. And so there's no fear of being caught, but you've got the video evidence. It shouldn't be difficult.
This pledge to investigate all of these crimes is, I think, essentially a laudable one, a worthy one. It would be great if it actually happens. Perhaps we'll have a conversation in a year or so and we'll see. The cynic in me would say, don't hold your breath, ladies and gentlemen, but I hope they do. I hope that pledges to reinvent neighbourhood policing are actually met, so you know who your local police officer is, you know their name, you know how to contact them, you know where they work, and all those important things that build trust and confidence.
But, Peter, none of this will make any difference whatsoever. You can investigate every crime you want, but if something isn't investigated quickly, and then you know, basically, that there's a proper deterrent to be afraid of, i.e., frankly, being locked up for some considerable period of time, taken off the streets, so that you're no longer a complete pain in the arse for the local community, then it'll make not a jot of difference.
Well, of course, we know the whole criminal justice system is in desperate need of reform, from the policing at the front line right through the Crown Prosecution Service, the courts, the prisons and probation. None of these are operating as effectively as they should be.
How much blame do you put on the CPS being too slow?
Well, the CPS has kind of, in recent years, I think, only wanted to back a winning horse. Well, you could say that with Benjamin Mendy, Ryan Giggs and Kevin Spacey in recent days, they've not been particularly adept at that either. They do kind of have this reluctance to give something a go sometimes, which courageous prosecutors need to do, and if the case fails, so be it. Sometimes somebody going through that process can, in effect, be a kind of a deterrent.
Feels to me we need a faster, bigger deterrent, a faster process and a clear deterrent at the end of it. Peter Bleksley, thank you so much indeed for your thoughts there. Former Scotland Yard detective. He knows it is not acceptable. He's worried about the reality as to whether or not it really will happen.